It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log. Hello, everyone. This is Mark Valenti. Welcome to the Teaser in 20. It was your choice to join us today. I want to thank you for making that choice. These sessions are at the most 20 minutes long, and sometimes they're exactly 20 minutes long. And the idea behind this is I just want to give you an opportunity to take these bite-sized bits of information and decide if it's something that's worth including in your entire menu of bits of information, or you may decide you want to spit it out. Either way, you're not expected to be a scholar after these sessions. It's really up to you what to do with this. And then if you want to read more, you're welcome to do so. I have documents associated with this, so if you haven't received it, please email me and I'll be happy to share it with you. You also may know, if we're connected on LinkedIn, that I like to share complimentary information out there as well, and that's another opportunity to learn some more. The idea behind these sessions is that we live in an imperfect world. There's chaos, and people are emotional and reactive, and you know what? That is okay. We don't try to change anybody here. We're just trying to move forward together and try to understand more about why we do the things we do, and then maybe make some improvements along the way. It's all meant to say that we live in an imperfect world and we are imperfect, and that is just fine. I like to pull together lots of information from the psychology world, the business world, and other places, and put it out there in those bite-sized pieces for you to decide if it's worth it for you to keep or not. We also try to frame every conversation around the elements of behavior change. There are three things that must be there before a human being changes behavior: knowledge, importance, and confidence. So you'll see that theme come up. Every session is rated PG-13, meaning we may talk about pop culture references that include things like mild language, sensuality, action, violence, rude humor. So you may be offended if you're under 13. Just wanted to throw that out there. Which leads us to today's teaser, the Delegation Dilemma. This is a perfect time of year to talk about this because many of us are struggling with balancing multiple different things and priorities. We're out there in the world competing with others to get the best deal, the best parking spot, the best things while we're trying to balance everything. So emotions come out. Now, maybe you decide that you want to forgo that trip to the mall. So instead, you want to focus on making Jeff Bezos even more rich than he already is. So you do this, but that in itself causes some additional stress around this season. And then once you actually get these packages, you want to bring it home. And then if you suffer from perfection paralysis, you may struggle with getting those 90-degree angles on your wrapping paper. So maybe you reach out to somebody for help, and you don't necessarily think they're doing the best job. So in the end, you decide, just forget this. I'm going to put it in a nice bag anyway and send it off. On top of doing all this, you find it's an opportunity to really prepare for the holidays and family and friends. And what do you know? Your family likes to talk about politics and all these controversial issues, which causes even more stress. And then you try to decorate your house and you feel like you're doing a great job, but it turns out that the person down the road feels like they're in competition with you, which causes even more stress. Maybe you don't celebrate these holidays at all, and you want to kind of be left alone while everybody else is around you, causing you more stress. And maybe you've just given up on everything. Here's the thing, even if you're not celebrating the holidays at all, you're still having to deal with the rest of us who are out there on the roads, taking your parking spot and just making your life miserable. Lots of stress. And then lo and behold, you wake up one morning and your car is covered with snow, and you typically try to do a great job with watching out for that, but you find out that your favorite weatherman is no longer with the station. So you're balancing all this, and it turns out you're responsible for other people around you, kids, family members, pets. And then guess what? You get an invitation to go to a 7.5-hour presentation on the holidays. A lot of things to deal with. In fact, this has been such a topic that Allegheny Health Network did an interview recently with Channel 11 WPXI of Pittsburgh, where psychiatrist Alicia J. Kaplan talks about the stress of the holiday season. She talks about how many of us are striving to do our best and sometimes perfection, which causes stress and anxiety, and it builds and builds and builds, especially as we try to multitask. Actually, let me check one thing on this order. Okay. Anyway, all this stuff is going on, and then we have to deal with our workplace. We're working in our offices, working in the hospitals, dealing with that stress. And we're answering 121 emails a day, trying to respond, and we're dealing with people. And let's just say you happen to do such a great job at
partnering with other people, especially quote unquote difficult ones, and you receive recognition for that. And instead of being able to rest and take advantage of these recognition you receive, turns out people give you more assignments. Then you read somewhere that the best idea is to make a list. So you make a list of the things you need to do, and it turns out as you make the list, you really focus on marking off the things that you do well, but keep pushing the other things down, down, down. All of this causes so much stress, which leads us to the topic, the delegation dilemma. The dilemma is you want help. You're thinking about getting help and you want to pass some of these tasks on, but you're really struggling with understanding, do I trust the people that I want to delegate to? And it goes back to what we talked about with the behavior change. You put an importance on delegation, but your confidence is low, especially as you think about what that may look like if you hand these things off. So instead of doing that, you end up doing the work, getting stressed, feeling exhausted, and your anxiety starts to bleed out into others and they become stressed. And soon you find you're just not the person you used to be. And in rare cases, you kind of lash out with all this pent up information and energy, which leads, of course, to its own consequences as well. So the big question is, if we know that we want to delegate, what prevents us from doing that? There's an article in the Houston Chronicle called Why Some Managers Have Difficulty Delegating by Laura Woods. And she talks about the 3 reasons why some managers have difficulty delegating. The first one is managers and other people in power may have low trust. They are in a position of vulnerability whenever they hand something off, and they feel that they are totally responsible for what happens once they hand it off, and they jump to the worst case scenarios, which could be getting fired. So they neglect passing it off because they're afraid that they may have to suffer the consequences if the task is not done appropriately. And sometimes people that are in positions of power try to make sure everything is just so. And because they have a certain way of doing it, they're afraid if they pass it off, that the person that they delegate to is going to screw it up or make some crazy thing that's not even relevant to the original task at hand. And we think about The Speed of Trust by Stephen M. R. Covey. He talks about 4 elements of trust that must be there. And we find that managers who do not trust the people that they work with, or people in your household, you do not trust the people you want to delegate to, we find that they have a low trust in the capabilities of the people around them. So low trust is the first thing. The second reason people have difficulty delegating is lack of time. We find that because we're multitasking, we're so busy and have a million things on our task list that we feel like we don't have time to actually delegate appropriately. So our tasks keep building up. We put on Band-Aids and try to put out the fires each day. The third reason managers have difficulty delegating is a need for control. Maybe the manager feels that they actually trust the people to do a good job, but because of that trust, they do not want to be outshone. So they neglect to pass it on because the manager feels that they want to be the one who sort of gets the accolades for doing the work. So what they do then is they either don't delegate or they delegate and then they micromanage and they watch every single mood, which actually lowers the confidence in everyone around them. So this really relates back to Dan Pink's drive, and people with a lower self-confidence are operating at extrinsic motivation. So they're really focused on getting approval from the people around them. And so they're afraid if they pass things off or if they lose control, that they may not be as good as a person as they could be, and they label themselves and their confidence goes down. So those are the 3 reasons why some people have difficulty delegating. So let's just say that in this case, you put an importance on it and your confidence is really low. What do we do with that? So as always, it starts with you and your brain. And we had a similar session on cognitive distortions, which are the lies we tell ourselves. As we think about what we can do, the first step is recognizing that you have a key to uncage your brain from these thoughts about labeling yourself and imagining you don't have enough time to do this work. So the idea behind it is starting with yourself. And then once you do and make that step, the question is, how can you learn how to delegate appropriately? So we're going to talk a bit about strategy for delegation, and we're going to think about it in terms of the what, the who, and the how. Let's start with the what. As we think about the what, let's start by identifying within ourselves, what are the things that get us up in the morning? What are we really good at? What do we actually like to do? What is our passion? And as we think about those things, and you're welcome to write them down, of course, we also want to think about the things that keep us up at night, the things that we're not so good at, the things that cause us stress. So identifying those things on the negative side, and we'll call it the D-level tasks, which is actually from an article by Dan Finkel, who writes in Forbes magazine, identifying those D-level tasks, which we have to decide if we want to delete them from our lives or defer them to a later time or delegate them. And they could be simple things like answering a customer service call or running a team meeting that you actually like to do, but maybe you're not that efficient at. Or maybe putting together a really creative PowerPoint that maybe you don't like to do, but you're good at it. So it's really identifying these D-level tasks that you can pass off to somebody else who's better at it, who actually wants to do it. And it's looking at your to-do list and thinking about what are the things I can immediately delegate. And as we think about this, in a perfect world, we could all have the energy we need to reach a goal. But in the real world, in the imperfect world, the moment we spend time doing something that is not in our wheelhouse, to use that cliche, or somebody else can do better, we start focusing our energy in all sorts of different ways, and we never reach the goal. The idea behind this focusing on the essentials, the things that you're good at and things you like to do, is being able to focus your energy and choose your tasks on those things so you can reach the goal and focus on it. This is the premise of the book Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McGowan. And it's about how do you identify the finish line and divert your energy toward that? And how do you decide what can you hand off to other people? There was a veterinary surgeon called Dr. Phil Zeltzman who actually created a matrix that may help you decide what to delegate. And as I started thinking about this, what can this veterinary surgeon teach me about delegating? I realized this is an awesome tool, so I tried it. He calls it the competence passion matrix. And he really starts off by thinking about what do I love and what am I good at? So for me, I really love presentations and I feel that I'm good at it. So how do I do more of it in my life? Then I'm thinking about what's something I really love, but I'm not so good at, and it has to be with database administration. I love the idea of organizing a database, but I'm not good at it, and it takes me a long time. So I'm going to try to delegate that. What's something I hate and I'm good at? Well, blogging. I feel like I'm actually good at expressing it, but I actually hate doing it. So it's something else I may want to consider delegating. Finally, I hate accounting. I'm not good at it, and I want to stay very far away from it. But there are people that are great at it, so it's something I want to delegate. So this matrix is something that perhaps could help you organize your thoughts. I'm not suggesting you dump every single thing that you hate doing on other people, but it's really start thinking about what's something you could potentially delegate, recognizing there's still some things that you hate doing that you're still going to probably have to do. So that was the what. Now let's talk about the who. The who is fairly simple. It's as you're thinking about running the race and handing things off to other people, who do you notice around you that is actually interested in running the race with you, that's intrinsically motivated? Who are the people that lace up whenever there's a task at hand and they're saying, me, I want to be involved? Start with those people who are already there with you. And if you're able to do this, it gives them a chance to practice and become confident and adapt their skills so they become better and better at something so you can move forward as a team. And it gives them a chance to reap the rewards. And it goes back to what I said earlier, though. You have to be comfortable with yourself and recognizing that your team member is the one who's going to get the rewards because they've done it and being okay with that. And then finally, if you delegate that to somebody else, they have an opportunity to fail. And in fact, we should all expect a failure. It's an opportunity to learn from our mistakes, but you'll never learn from them unless you have a chance to do them, and they'll never do it until you delegate the task to them. And again, this behavior change will give them the confidence they need to keep trying to improve and succeed. So that's the what and the who. Finally, let's talk about the how. There's an amazing book called If You Want It Done Right, You Don't Have to Do It Yourself by Donna Gennett, PhD. And I really was impacted by this short book. It's like 85 pages, and it tells the story of two cousins who are working, and one of them is doing an effective job of delegating, and the other one isn't. And she talks about, through the story, the 6 elements of effective delegation. The first one is prepare beforehand. So with anything, keep in mind that preparation is the key to success. Knowing what you're going to talk about, knowing what you're going to delegate allows for a calmer conversation, an opportunity to coach somebody as you pass on those delegated tasks. The second step is be clear and concise. People struggle with knowing what's expected of them. So the more you can be clear as a delegator about what you expect and sort of the specifics of that outcome. And how will you measure that? And again, this isn't about micromanaging or being there every moment with them. It's sort of outlining your expectations and giving them the freedom to be able to do that. Additionally, it's your opportunity to explain the why behind why you're doing it, because if you explain the why, they have a better sense and understanding of what's going on, and it may give them a chance to become creative with their problem solving as well. The third element of effective delegation is outline the time frame. How often have you ever received an assignment without a clear designation of the time? So outlining the time frame lets people know, do you want this done in a week, a year, 5 months, etc., so they can prioritize. The fourth element is to define authority. So if you are delegating, you're giving them a certain level of authority. It's up to you to let them know what the authority they have. And it comes basically in 3 steps. Do they have the authority to research and recommend to you, or initiate and inform you of what's going on, or to truly act on your behalf? The fifth element of effective delegation is to set up checkpoints. You want to be able to check in with people to see how they're doing. See if you need to clarify things further, or if you need to be there to support them. The sixth and final element is to debrief. Rarely do we stop and say, what did we really learn from this situation? How can we improve? So the sixth element of effective delegation is to set up purposeful time after the task is completed to sit down and do a CQI, continuous quality improvement process, to sit down with the team, with the person, and say, what went well? What didn't go so well? And what can we improve moving forward? It's about moving away from saying, well, we should have done this or shouldn't have done that, but saying, what can we learn and how can we improve? And spending purposeful time doing that. That is the what, the who, and the how of effective delegation. And the idea behind this is, as a leader, it is your job to activate your team. And you activate your team by building their own confidence and tying into their intrinsic motivation and being there to support them when necessary. And you can't do that if you are struggling yourself with your own energy and your low battery. And if you cannot muster the time or the strength to be able to train others, then your team will never be able to be successful, and they'll have to decide if they want to keep mustering through this job that they feel little intrinsic motivation with, or they want to move on. And delegation not only helps you, it helps give them the chance to take their shoes out of their box and practice and run a little bit and get better and get better and better, so you move forward as a high-functioning team. So this has been the Teaser in 20 Delegation Dilemma. This is Mark Valenti, and have a fantastic day and consider delegating some of those tasks.